1998 Corvette C5 with an LS1. It's got LS6 heads, LS6 throttle body, some other little goodies in it as well. Gonna be doing some tuning over the next couple months with Dan Maslik. He's a local legend with GM cars, been tuning this stuff since it came out. We're gonna have him work on some idle tuning with us. I'll throw in some clips of that. He already did that. Changing some plugs out now, and gonna do a couple other little things. Gonna take it to the dyno tomorrow with Dan and see what kind of power we can put down, see what we can mess with on the tune to make some good, reliable power. So we don't want to get too aggressive with anything. It's just gonna be a street car. We don't want to go too much more than maybe 6,900 RPM. Sounds good to me. It's set up right now with dual valve springs and chromoly push rods. I'm going to be pulling the valve covers pretty soon to do a valve cover gasket, just because we don't know when the last time it was done. And while I'm in there, I'm gonna go ahead and put some fresh dual valve springs in there as well, just because we're in there anyways, we might as well just change them. And I'm gonna do rocker arms as well, so should be good for that 68, 69, maybe even 7,000 RPM range for just some drag racing and stuff like that to hit the track with. Also gonna see if we can have Dan make me a little bit more of a conservative tune. If I want to go to the drift track and just bang the limiter or get close to it, you know, the car makes plenty of power, plenty of torque that we don't need to be that high up in the RPM range, banging the rev limiter. So gonna see if I can get a second tune that I can get going as well. We can switch over on HP tuners whenever we want to go hit the drift track as well. So gonna cut some clips of the progress and some other little tuning things, and maybe some explanations from Dan Maslik himself, who breaks this stuff down incredibly.
All I'm gonna do is just upload it first.
So here we are back to the car. Dan downloaded some files yesterday and brought everything home, and after looking at some stuff, he realized it might be better just to take a more in-depth look at what the car was programmed with, and he was telling me it was a good idea. He did. Found a bunch of little things like the knock sensors and was explaining that the knock sensors had been turned off by the previous tuner, which I guess, like you said, it just makes tuning the car a little bit easier. And
yeah, if you have the knock sensors, you could be a little more aggressive. And if you're a little more aggressive, you could basically put timing in that the knock sensors will pull ignition timing out. They'll pull advance out if they see the engine in trouble. If you shut that safeguard off and you put too much timing in, the one day you pump bad gas, you get knock or detonation, that's when the engine expires. So yeah, you get the knock sensors to do their job, which is look for detonation and knock activity. And as long as they're looking for it, then the ECU can do its job and look for maximum power.
Right. So you could actually increase timing, right? A little bit?
Yeah, you can add a few degrees of timing, and 4 degrees of timing is another 20 to 30 horsepower.
Right. So that's a big difference.
Why leave that on the table, right?
So as long as the knock sensors are working properly,
yeah,
it's safer to run additional timing in the car and make a little more power.
Exactly.
So there's no point to have them turned off. Not only that, but they're gonna realize that there's an issue, and if I'm running the car hard or sitting there at high RPMs and bouncing rev limiter and stuff like that,
there's no safety
they'll realize
net, safety net. And the other nice thing is of course, the guy who would have tuned this thing with the cam would have shut those knock sensors off because of the cam clatter at low RPM. All you do is you set the ECU to basically to understand that that's cam clatter, and you set it to ignore that at low RPM, but up high where you really need that detonation control, peak torque and peak horsepower, that's where you want them to be active. And you can only set it on or off. You can't have it, but if it's on, you can vary what it looks for where.
And that's just one of the things you found. I guess you were looking at a bunch of other little stuff too as well.
Long-term fuel trim was shut off. A bunch of little issues, that. It was set to ignore the map sensor above 400 RPM, which to me, that's when you give up throttle response, because when you look at the way the engine runs, the GM PCM uses map, manifold air pressure sensor, and the mass airflow sensor, and it weights the two depending on the RPM that you're running at. If the map sensor is there and can give you instantaneous information for the computer, that's what you want. Mass airflow, it lags because it's so far away from the intake valve. So when you punch the throttle open, the air, by the time it passes the mass airflow, goes through the throttle body, into the intake manifold, into the cylinder. That's a long lag time-wise. 4,000 RPM and higher, that air moves quick, so you can rely more on the mass airflow. But below 4,000 RPM, you want to weight more of the map sensor, which gives you an instantaneous reading. So transient throttle response. If you're in a drift car, you're going around a turn, you want instant transient response. that's where the map sensor helps you. When guys don't want to tune the VE tables in this car, they shut the map sensor off, and that it helps them tune it a little better for smoothness, but you lose your transient response. So we're going to try to bring that back.
That sounds awesome. More power, baby.
That's it. Power, throttle response, that's it. Drivability.
So overall, I mean, the last guy tuned it, good tune for safe power. There's nothing really too wrong with it. It was just somewhat conservative and done a little bit the easy way, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So whether he did it the easy way or wasn't paid to do it fully, it's always, you know.
Right. So it could have been a cheaper tune.
Yeah, good, fast, cheap, you know, pick two.
Yeah, it feels fast. I mean, it felt fast driving. It felt plenty fast driving it.
We're going to try to make it a little bit faster. Much safer, much more drivable.
Yep, and that's kind of one of those things, you know, I said, hey, if I'm going around a turn and I'm banging rev limiter, I want that to be safe. I don't want to have any issues with that and long-term reliability with this car. I don't want to have to stick another motor in here anytime soon.
We're going to try to deliver. All right, well, let's see how it starts and runs.
And the whole reason why we even brought the laptop out was it was having trouble idling. So this all started from an idling issue, and now we're just getting into it here.
Like it did before.
Right.
So what we're going to do is trim it.
So it drops
so
faster.
It drops faster, and we're going to get it to idle lower.
Make it sound nice and snappy.
That's it, man. Exactly.
Yeah, we want that.
Yeah, exactly. Change the mass airflow sensor so we can adjust this if we feel we need to. We'll let it get a little hotter. But basically what you're trying to do is get this as close to zero as possible when you adjust the mass airflow sensor. This isn't bad.
What does the long-term fuel trim do?
What it does is when the engine is calculating a pulse width, the amount of time that it's going to hold the injectors open, it calculates that time and it calls that time base pulse width. And long-term fuel trim is simply saying that when you've calculated that value, then from bank 1 you're going to subtract almost 8%, bank 2 you're going to subtract almost 5% from its calculation, because this engine doesn't need that much fuel. So it's just like a thermostat trimming, you know, in your house. You want temperature. It's going to try to put it as close to that temperature as you can. This is doing the same thing with the fuel. So short term, obviously you see is in some cases adding a little bit. Sometimes the number's negative, it's taking it away. That's an instantaneous change.
So the car used to run pretty hot. It would get hot. Could that be a long-term fuel trim issue?
This is going to help it out because it's going to give it a little more. In this case, it's going to take fuel out. It's taking out just a little bit. These actually numbers aren't too bad. When you're below 5%, you know, plus or minus 5%, then you've got it trimmed fairly well. And your oxygen sensors they're alive, they're bouncing back and forth, so that's a good thing. And of course, now that we're relying mostly on ignition timing for idle control, very little air, now we can start lowering this idle speed and try to get it down to like 800 RPM, 750, something like that. You see, it comes down and just boom, hits your idle speed. It's not, you know, drastic.
Yeah.
So now it doesn't fall like it did before. Big difference. Devil's in the details, man.
That's some little stuff. So
yeah, this thing's responding well, so that's good. Base. We're going to try to lower this by 150 RPM when we're at temperature.
So you're selecting the temperatures, and it's going to be able to come down a lot more.
Highlight it, and then what we're going to do is, you know, of course, you throw in the value you want it to jump by. And since this thing doesn't have a negative, we're basically going to minus 150 and add -1. So now we've cut it down. So obviously, when it's colder temperatures, it's going to run a higher idle speed. And as it warms up, the idle is going to progressively drop. When it hits 176 Fahrenheit, it'll go in a closed loop, and we're going to try for a 750 RPM idle.
Okay.
So we're going to give that a whirl. We're always going to relabel our new tune file. We're going to name it something new so that it, whoops, we T2. we name it something new so that we can always revert back. Some people will put in what changes they made.
Like idle or something, yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of, well, we could do that if you want. If I ever give you these files. Idle, speed, reduction. So this way,
so you're
always
continuously
back.
just building back on the
Exactly,
original
yep.
tune file.
Yep. So we save that, make sure it's saved. Pop in the key. Put in the new calibration.
All right, back here at work. Just wanted to wrap up that video. So awesome to have Dan explaining what tuning is and how the tuning works, and having him really help me out with this car, cleaning up that tuning that was originally on that car. Immediately after I saw an increase in power in the top RPM range, and also a way smoother, way cleaner idle down low, returning back to idle. Everything was just so much cleaner. So awesome to have Dan help me out with the car and mentoring me with this. We want to be able to do drifting, track days, and some drag racing stuff too. So really want this car to be a jack of all trades. I don't care if it's a master of any, it's just a fun car. I'm gonna love just working on it and seeing the process of having a race car here for a little bit. So stay tuned. I know there's plenty more awesome times to come with it. Take care.